Just remind council about your microphones, make sure they're on.
Craig's is on.
Green light.
Got it, sir.
Thanks for checking.
Yeah.
By 6:30, so I'm going to start here. Officially announce the opening of the Vernon City Council meeting for first meeting of September. And first item is, after calling to order, to see if there are any agenda additions or in getting approval of agenda. I understand because of the number of people that we have here, Scott obviously has a health issue within his family, and Stephanie has some last minute travel, business travel going on here. So that's why we're just glad to have a quorum tonight. But are there any agenda additions that were made or changes for the discussion items? Chris?
No, I would probably make the comment. So discussion item number 4 is more of an FYI. 3 and 4 both are more of an FYI. I would prefer, especially with diversity, with 2 council members not being present, that we not actually engage in discussion on those 2 items tonight. They're not time sensitive.
So you're talking about agenda item or
L1 and L2.
Okay. Then, Paul?
I would move to approve.
Pulling out L1, L2. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Ready to vote on that motion of the agenda approval with that one recommendation, a couple items we dropped. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is communications. Anybody here speak to the council on any item that's not on the agenda? Anybody? I think we will move. Oh, yes, Mark?
Not on, just when J6 comes up, I just have a question about
That sounds fine, and catch your attention at J6.
that.
Hearing no other communication from the public here, we'll move on to consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Any questions for Chris for that? Or ready to move on?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Deb.
I'll second that.
Craig, second. Ready to vote on the consent agenda, those 3 items. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're off to public hearings. First one is public hearing for the authorization of a loan agreement and issuance of notes to evidence the obligation of the city thereunder. And we had a large supplement referencing that. Chris, do you want to do an introduction about that?
So the 2 public hearings are actually on Resolution 97, 22B and C. The supplement was in reference to G6, which is 2022F. As it relates to the public hearing, normally we would have one public hearing for the entire $1.5 million borrow. However, the repayment structure for that $1.5 million necessitated splitting it up because $600,000 of those could potentially be urban renewal paid bonds. So the reason that you have 2 public hearings in tonight's meeting is one's $900,000, which is considered general obligation debt, and $600,000, which is considered urban renewal, potentially urban renewal debt. When it gets sold, it will get sold as a $1.5 million debt issuance. And like I said, normally we don't have 2 public hearings. The supplement, the official statement, goes along with the electronic bidding procedures. This is what banks and other items or other individuals that are going to bid on those bonds will see. We did not receive any petitions, which would have preempted the public hearing on the $600,000 portion of the note without a petition, and then the council can just move forward.
So do we have to be very discreet to say that this is the public hearing for the issuance of the $900,000?
So you will open the, you go on this public hearing, so you will take any comments on the $900,000 portion first, then you will close the public hearing and go to that resolution G-2, and then come back in and reopen the public hearing for the $600,000, same procedure.
that explanation, at 6:34, Sue, I'm going to officially open the public hearing on the first component here, the $900,000 government observation bond. Is there anybody here from the public here to speak to E1? Hearing no comments from the public, I think I will officially close the public hearing at 6:35 and then proceed to G2. Is that correct?
Correct.
Chris, and G2 is resolution 9-7-2022B, instituting proceedings to take additional action for issuance of not to exceed the 900,000 GO capital loan notes. Any further questions of Chris about that? Otherwise, with this resolution, we'll go to a roll call vote. Any questions? Last call. Okay, let's take a motion to approve and move forward. Which
So moved.
by Paul, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb, on G2. This is a roll call vote, which I'll ask Sue to call roll.
Turner,
Aye.
Mingo,
Yes.
Vernon,
Yes.
Resolution passes, thank you. Moving on to item E2, 6:36, I'll officially open the public hearing on the remaining issuance, the $600,000. Is there anybody here in the public here to speak to that item? Nothing further to add. Chris, no further comments. There were no comments to City Hall, if I remember correctly, on that one either. Okay. Hearing no comments, 6:36, I'll close the public hearing on item E2, and we'll proceed to G3, resolution 9-7-2022C, instituting proceedings to take additional action for issuance of not to exceed 600,000 GO loan notes. Any last minute things to add, Chris? Otherwise, we have a motion. Can we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Craig, and then Deb on the second. Catch that, Sue?
yes, I am.
Okay. Got a motion on the floor to approve, it's been seconded, item G3. And that is also a roll call vote, so if you're ready to, go ahead.
Vernon,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Mingo,
Yes.
Thank you. Item G3 has passed. No public hearings, no ordinance for approvals. We've got G1, resolution 9-7-2022A, approving the vacation of the public utility easement on Mountain View School District property. Saw the map. Any information you want to add to it, Chris?
No, this is an easement that, from my understanding, was originally put in before the high school went in, that they were potentially going to develop that ground further. Once the high school went in, there was no necessary or no need for this easement anymore.
Just kind of clean up that
Correct.
process. Okay. And any comments to City Hall about it?
None.
Okay.
I move approval of resolution 9-7-2022A, approving the vacation of the public utility easement on Mount Vernon Community School District property.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Paul and Deb. Got a motion on the floor to approve 9-7-2022A. Hearing no further questions, I think we're ready to vote on that, and that is also a roll call vote. So, Sue?
Vernon,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Mingo,
Yes.
Thank you. That resolution passes. Item G4, award for construction bid for the bridge repair of First Street West over Union Pacific Railroad. Chris gave us a price. We got an architect price, we've got a bid price, and recommendation. Anything to add? Chris?
Now, again, the capital improvements plan for $180,000 expense. The engineer's estimate was adjusted after conversations with contractors down to $80,000. We did receive 4 bids, the low bid being $111,720 from Jasper. Staff is recommending that we move forward with this project. It's been 5 years in the making. It's technically under what we expected to pay on a franchise fee. even though it's more than the engineer's estimate.
So that would still be this fall, and what was the timeline on how long it would close that access?
The actual closure is still up in the air until we meet with the contractor. The project's slated to take 6 to 8 weeks.
How long?
Whether or not they have to close the street the entire time is still a question mark.
That's still, okay. Chief Shannon tells me that the Springville Road work on the road is near completion, if not completed.
It was open, I drove over tonight, very
And
nice.
it's totally open, okay, good. So that, we have that access point. Good. Hopefully it was repaired well. Got a recommendation in 97-2023D.
I move to approve Resolution 9-7-2022D, making award of the construction bid for bridge repairs, First Street West over Union Pacific Railroad.
Thank you, Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. The motion on the floor to approve 9-7-2022D. And this resolution also needs a roll call vote if you are ready, Sue.
Eagle,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
2022D passes. Moving on to item 5 of the resolutions. This is a award contract for construction bids for public works cold storage buildings on Bryant Road site.
So this project was bid as 2 buildings. It came in with one bidder at $100,000 more than what the engineer's estimate was. So staff is recommending that we reject these bids, split the project into 3 options. So one building as A and B. So one building for A, one building for B, and then C would be the combination of the 2 buildings and see if we can't get an additional couple bidders on the project. So
Why do you think there's only one bid? Just capacity from...
right now it's materials. I mean, there's a combination of everything. To be quite honest with you, they're having just as hard of a time right now trying to find labor as we are.
Yeah.
So we did have an option in there to construct the buildings prior to December 1. I think by the time we get through this process, that won't be feasible. But we're optimistic that we would at least get potentially a couple more bidders. There were people that were interested, just ultimately didn't pull the trigger. And again, the goal has always been to get at least one building. If we can get 2 for the price of what we had originally budgeted for, that's what we're attempting to do. But we'll see.
How long do you anticipate waiting until we open it?
So at the next meeting, you'll have a resolution, the same 2-page resolution that goes through on this public hearings and bid dates. So it'll start at the next meeting.
Sort of quickly.
Yes.
Around like 6 months right now.
No.
For the bidding climate, the materials climate is better at that point.
Cross my fingers.
Any comments from the public about that?
Yeah, I can kind of speak a little bit there.
If you could introduce yourself and your name.
I'm Brad Robinson, Robinson Construction. Just make sure you can hear me well. Yeah, I can kind of chime in a little bit about the material shortages. That's one thing from the engineering specs that they kind of spec'd out. From a traditional, like pre-engineered closed frame building that they look at, they did kind of add some updated things like 26H steel and some things that were built, which is good for the city, but it also complicates how the structures are all going to get put together. There was also some site work information in there that maybe needed to be clarified a little bit. So I think there was a few members that were probably that looked at that, and it kind of slowed the process because they were actually looking, there was a pretty short time frame. From me looking at it, I did actually look at the bid pretty good. I think I was a little bit late to the table on some things, but I do feel that there can be some budgets met and timeframes met for the city to help you out. Is there any questions, I guess, from a construction aspect that would help you guys understand anything there?
I appreciate that feedback right there, that tells me a lot.
Yes, I think there's
Thank
some
you.
offer, some
Thank you.
ongoing there and some communication, so, yes.
Thanks for feedback from your contractor
Thank
side.
you, Brad.
Yes, appreciate it.
Okay, this recommendation by staff to reject the construction bid, I guess, that we got so far. And for that, we need a motion and second, and then a roll call vote. There's a motion to that effect to accept Chris's.
So I'll move that we reject bids that we've received for the Public Works cold storage buildings.
Thank you, Deb. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Craig. Motion on the floor to reject the award of the construction bid for the Public Works cold storage building at this point, and possibly imply that we're going to get back to the table again here in the next few weeks or less than a month. Deb, or Sue, are you ready to call the roll?
Eagle.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes.
Motion passes to reject. Item 6 under resolutions, approving electronic bidding procedures and distribution of official statement. Item 6.
So this item is this supplement, and this is the official statement that goes out to any of the interesting purchasers of the $1.5 million borrowing. Tom asked me prior to the meeting if all of this information gets read and was necessary. At the forefront is our rating. It's probably the single biggest important piece of that entire puzzle. Having the AA negative rating for a community our size is there really isn't much better than we could have done. So, yes, they look at all that information. You're essentially selling your community and then the financial status of it. So, it will. The last time that we sold a bond over $1 million was for the LBC, and I think we had something like a record 12 or something. It was in, I know that Spirit Financial was there, and they were amazed at the number of bids that were coming in for that project. And so, interest rates will be higher than they were obviously when we sold those bonds, but they're still pretty competitive.
This is to allow basically electronic bidding. You don't have to be present. You don't have to get a paper document in at a certain window of time or anything like that.
No, and they will wait till the last 30 seconds to hit submit. So there will be nothing on that computer screen, and then all of a sudden it'll start popping up really fast.
Is it like a silent auction or something?
Yeah, for the most part, everybody is waiting. And it's crazy to watch that happen, because I know when we did the LBC, I was sweating bullets. I mean, it was down to like a minute before the bids were supposed to close, and they got a clock right there. It's almost like an auction where they show.
Kind of like my fantasy
Oh.
football draft Sunday night.
So it was a lot, and then all of a sudden it was just like boom, boom, boom. As soon as the first one came, then you 2, 3, 4 at a time.
We need a motion and a second to approve the electronic bidding process for this on sale. Start with a motion and a second.
Move approval of resolution 9-7-2022F, approving electronic bidding procedures and distribution of official statement.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Again, roll call vote. So if you're ready.
Schindler.
Yes.
Eagle.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes.
2022E, I'm sorry, yeah, passes. Thank you. Anything else on that process, Chris? Otherwise, we're going to go to the final plat for Armstrong Addition Part 2. 2022G. Anything to add? It's the same.
No, nothing new, same plat. The only thing that I would note on the resolution or a change, it should be Armstrong first whereas instead of Amundsen. So it would be Armstrong Acre in that resolution, so that'll be changed.
On page 49, it actually is the first full paragraph.
Got it.
Should be Armstrong, Armstrong in the middle.
Got it.
With that correction, yeah.
I would move approval of resolution 9-7-2022G, approving the final plat of Armstrong Addition Part 2 to the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul and Craig. Get another resolution and get another roll call vote.
Eagle.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes.
Motion passes. That's the final plat of Armstrong Proclamation Part 2. City of Mount Vernon. No proclamations, no old business. Going to motion for approval, beginning with consideration of claims list, the last list that was sent out this afternoon. Anybody have questions about any items from that list, or
Student
move
before
forward?
went out in the very.
Did you have a question about it?
No.
Okay.
Unless there was something really radical that she sent out there, that the $100,000. Yeah, just the Sue for the last 3 months for
I've
us.
never known Sue to do anything radical.
How about approving the claims list then? So motion to approve.
So move.
Thank you. Second, Greg and Paul. Motion on the floor to approve the claims list, the last person that was presented. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the second item. Discussion and consideration of recommended school district trail light request. Council action is needed. I think this goes back to a request from a couple meetings ago, or somewhat ago. Greg, do you want to speak to that? Sure.
Didn't realize it's casual Wednesday, or I would have shut down. I think we all agree that Mount Vernon is a very healthy community and a very active community and a walking community. I don't know if there's two better examples than that, than the mayor and myself, two old guys who climb the pavement on a regular basis. But as part of our proposed activities complex project, there will be a new trail that will go in from the northwest corner of our property, just off 13th Avenue. We'll run north to south along the west side of the complex, between the complex and Stonebrook neighborhood, and hook into the little switchback pathway that goes into Stonebrook, along with eventually hooking up with our sidewalks and everything that will hook into the current trail that runs along in front of the LDC. When we were talking planning and zoning in the city council regarding okaying the project overall, we did discuss the lighting of this trail, and really planning and zoning that pushed our thinking on that. It was not originally in our plans, partially because we were worried about the impact on neighbors, but also part of it was a little bit, looking at the expense of the project and knowing that in the time that I've been speaking so far, the project has probably gone up another $10,000. But so we're conscious of that. But once we talked more in depth with planning and zoning, we thought this is a great opportunity, not only for the district, but for the city to develop an even broader, wider trail complex that would be lighted well into the evening. We would run it the same way that the LDC trail is run, with time light. Literally, our lights would look exactly the same as what is currently on the LDC trail. One of the things, too, that we are making very clear is that if this activities complex project goes forward and we're successful in the bidding process, we want that facility to be a community facility. We want people to be walking that track and running that track at nights. We want people to be able to use the field workout. We want them to be able to run the bleachers if that's the kind of thing that they use for workouts. So we're looking at pulling together a wide trail system on our campus and in front of the LEC that did not exist 3 years ago. And now would allow people to get on the trail at Palisades to the south and west, or into the northwest corner, and literally walk or run a trail system all the way through our campus east to Fifth Avenue. We think this is not only a benefit for the district, but for the city in general, which is why we are asking potentially for your financial assistance with the trail project. Our project went out to bid today. Bids are due on October 7th. And as you know, we've been trying to do this funding of this in a unique way. We are a three-pronged attack here. We have raised about $2 million in commitments from private individuals. We are earmarking $1 million or so of our own district facilities money, and we will borrow approximately $3 million to $3.2 million against our facilities money in the district to hopefully pay for the project. As I joked about it before, but yes, this is a project that had we built it in 2016 with the bond issue, we would have paid approximately what we are going to borrow to make this happen now, 6-7 years later.
So we're looking at any opportunity we have to possibly partner with the city and others to help pay for the project. Currently, the lighting of the trail is earmarked for about $75,000 to $80,000. I sent you a letter earlier stating it was $75,000. We added another pole so that the lighting would increase in the area of that switchback down into the Palisades area. We do think it's good for the city. We do think it's good for the residents. I do harken back to the days when we were looking at building the LDC, and I think that, you know, if the superintendent was a better businessman and wanted to play hardball, he probably could have pushed to ask for more for the land to put the LDC where it is, but we didn't because, number one, we wanted to partner with the LDC with use of the facility, and number two, we desperately wanted that facility right where it's at so that our students, our families, and everyone could access it. So we're just asking the city council to consider whether or not you could make any type of financial commitment to help pay for what we deem really a city trail project. We would assume all responsibility from the time it's built for any type of upkeep, repair, so on and so forth. The only thing we would be asking the city is some type of donation up front to help us fund that part of our project. And if for no other reason you can't consider this, we need salt and Friday night. So that should be enough. But, thank you for your consideration. If it's something that just doesn't work in the budget, we completely understand, but we thought after our conversation with planning and zoning, we would please reach out. Any questions?
Chris, where would this money come from?
Trails money, lost.
Say that again?
Lost. Local option sales tax.
So if we were to approve funding towards
Lost.
the lighting, what on the current lost trail plan would have to go to the back burner?
So, as far as that's concerned, and I kind of alluded to that it will push projects back, but the truth of the matter is we've currently been paying cash for those projects as we accumulate local option sales tax money and we pay cash for this one. So, it's a little bit difficult to answer that question because they have prioritized projects based upon monies available. And we have gone on a hole in that fund. So we know that we're going to accumulate approximately $60,000, give or take, in local option sales tax specifically for trails. If we have $20,000 in there, and we know that we're going to gain another $60,000, we'll let that.
So let me ask it in a different way. Lost has a horizon, correct?
Correct.
And if not renewed, then we have a finite pool of money. Do we run the risk of, if we fund this particular project, do we run the risk of not being able to do some of the other projects if that finite pool of money goes away?
No. I mean, we're talking, my recommendation would be no more than 30,000. There are other funding mechanisms. If we came down to the end hour on this, where we could identify $30,000 to finish a trail project if we needed to. So, I mean, if we're talking about potentially pushing back, you're maybe talking about 6 months to a year. And as I alluded to, theoretically, it will become part of the trail network. It's part of their construction project. And, you know, the argument on the other side would be if a developer were doing this, we would require them to put that in. But the school is not a typical developer in doing this for profit. So if the ask would be limited to 30,000, then I'm not super concerned about the future fate of other projects.
Historically speaking, this reminds me somewhat of when I was asked to be Solomon and cut the baby at the firehouse in the future community center.
Why I'm asking the question, Paul?
So, my viewpoint at that time, which is still my viewpoint here, is we have a shovel-ready project. It serves a community value with a community partner, and the value of this, thinking about our other community partner in some impetus to assist the city and the school to go from that northwest corner up into the campus and into the rest of the community. I think $30,000 investing in that project today has greater value than the what if and when we might use it in the future.
Right, and the purpose of my asking the question that particular way is we've talked, there was a prioritized list of things that the trail committee came forward.
And that still exists.
Right, and I just wanted to be respectful
Yeah.
of those things that had come forward.
Absolutely, and that's where, as leaders, we need to ask of our citizens that put a lot of time and effort into that to consider the return on investment, the timing, and, I think that's extremely important that we do that. So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that comparative historical thought, because so often we make decisions based upon what we know today only with blinders on and not think of the past, which I'm working, and also the future. And I appreciate the fact that we're doing that, and that's extremely important.
And I do as well, and I very much appreciate trying to create a safe environment by appropriate lighting in an environment like that. And it's not only for the patrons at the yet-to-be-built facility, which is hugely important, but anybody who just generally uses that.
And I would rather spend $30,000 today to light a trail like that than $30,000 to build a trail that's not lit
Yep.
in the future.
Yeah, so it's not only safe, it's inviting.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
And don't get me wrong, Matt will not let me forget this conversation. You said that it would only take 6 months. So rest assured that if the trail project comes up and he's ready to push forward, he will remind me of what I said tonight.
This guy right here.
Well, I just
Decided to go to the sport.
I just want to add that this trail is on the master trails plan, so this portion of it is in addition to connect to an existing trail that has a dead end. Two, and Paul may remember this, I don't think anybody else was on council, but about 6 or 7 years ago, I proposed this connection point to the council, and it was denied. And it was based on the fact that they felt that the sidewalk was close enough, there was no project it was going to be next to or adjacent to, so.
That's when we put the spur of sidewalk on the city lot
Right.
that is now going to be the entrance, the emergency access entrance. So this will be connecting that.
This will connect that, correct.
So, ye who are patient are rewarded.
Yes, I'm not here to oppose it,
So two key points, Matt, that are takeaways. One is that it's part of the master trails plan, because that's extremely important when I think of value of city money to a project with a partner. And then two, the fact that I do remember those discussions now, and the fact that it made sense then, and if it made sense then, it makes even more sense now, to me. That's in my humble opinion. Thank you.
Question for Superintendent Bainhorst, with just catching a cross-country meet last week, would that be part of a cross-country course, or do you want to stay off concrete and only on grass? Would it change?
Stay on grass as much as possible. We do have mats out on different crossing points on the sidewalks. We are consciously trying to keep enough green space around the complex to ensure that we can still run the cross-country meet Poor cross-country coaches see us slowly eroding away the corners with the LEC, with the performing arts center, with this. We still think there's an avenue to do that, so we can still largely remain on grass and run across country.
I'm sure some of the neighbors wouldn't mind having the course go through there, right, Officer Chief Sanders?
That'd be great.
Yours are,
They run the back, right behind my yard.
my grandson Steve Deal home, there's a few others that might.
Steve Deal. Got a recommendation from staff for no more than $30,000 is what is listed here. Are there questions for Big Horse or Chris? What is the rule of the council here? I guess we need a consideration up or down and an amount, if not that 30.
So I just want to ask, the 30,000 fits within our budget constraints and our fiscal plan?
Yeah, it still leaves us cash
It still
in
leaves us.
the local property sales tax if we want to start engineering another project. We have that available. My recommendation of 30,000 was between a third and a half. That was prior to Craig telling me that the price had gone up.
It's still 37.5%, so it's still in between 30.
So, really, again, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here. We're talking about, whether or not you want to increase that to be half, or do you want to go separate?
It's a one-time cost.
It is.
I mean, that master trail plan, there's a lot on there probably wouldn't be one-time costs, but this is a one-time cost.
I will not be hurt by any means if you don't take my recommendation. We could afford both if you wanted to go up to half.
Craig, of the neighbors that are most closely related to that area, have they been notified about it? I know we've got motions censored, but I do remember on Facebook 2 springs ago, catching grief about our own lights, and that was farther away from residences, before we had the automatic component on it. And that was a heck of a way to get greeted by the neighbors there. So for these neighbors that are even closer, much closer, do they know, hey, that the lights are coming, and yes, their motion?
There have been a series of communications sent out specifically to Stony neighbors that were the most impacted by the project. There have been invitations to meetings regarding discussions, including the planning and zoning, the city council meetings back in the spring. We feel we've had ample opportunity. They have another public hearing possibility on Monday night. They've had ample opportunity to step forward and share their displeasure. I mean, there are a handful of neighbors that we're going to push back against it no matter what. Some of the others in that area closest to it that are in favor of the project are in favor of the lights.
And this is the discussion about not just stadium lights, but
Yes,
that's one level, but also
we've been very
Trail
transparent
lights.
about the lighting of the trail since the spring. Because really, when Truman Jordan brought it up in planning and zoning, that's when since then, I think we've communicated very clearly that this is a probability.
And I just feel compelled to make a statement regarding the lights aspect of that. Being a resident that lives by the trail where the lights are visible from my property, it's not that impeding to see that. I think the much larger issue is public safety. You're walking in trails that are in secluded areas and dark, and that the trails are used at all times of day and night. I've been out letting the dog out at 4 o'clock in the morning and seeing people walking the trails at that time. So public safety is a huge component for that I think I advocate for the lights as well.
Thank you, Chief Sharon.
So I'd like to go out on a limb and move for approval of the school district trail request funding to be 50% of the requested amount. So if I heard you right, that would be
Be 40,000.
ish thousand?
I would second.
Let's get a number here. Is it 40 or 50%?
40.
40, okay. So motion and second for 40,000 for 40 here. Okay. Split the baby here. Any further discussion? You're okay?
No, I'm really appreciative of him reminding me what we got for
I had to play that card eventually.
I can hope that I come back at some point.
I've been holding that card for 5 years.
Well, and if somebody's new to the council, you know, they hear Paul say, anytime we have a chance to partner with the school district or Cornell College or fill in the blank, now, then raising the ante a little bit for that partnership is wonderful. If Chris and others believe that we can afford to do that.
If you're flipping cards here, I would also point out the fact that I was the one that took the Dan Stoner call, the donation of that land, totally free to the school district. So there is that component there.
Yeah, that's right.
I was not going to name any of those who may have been disgruntled with the price that the city.
You opened it, that was where it started.
I know that
It was free. I had a hard time getting over that, I had to pay anything for that land. But I don't see that. Believe it or not, we've got a motion and a second for $40,000 to support this lighting project. And if there are no further questions, we're ready to vote on it. This is a voice vote. All in favor of passing the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 3.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone who spoke up, everyone contributed.
Got a consideration of a purchase of a 2020 Chevy Equinox as a city travel inspection vehicle. Council action is needed here.
We've started talking about the replacement travel vehicle when we opted to get rid of the former police Explorer that we would move the Explorer out of police duty and then up to City Hall. At that time, the one that we had, it would allow staff to take any further than Cedar Rapids because of the issues that it had. And we were working on the merger with Lisbon and bringing some of their vehicles over. So at the time, we talked about just getting a travel/inspection vehicle and not having to worry about trying to rotate the fleet, because what tends to come out of PD when they're done with it does not necessarily translate to a travel vehicle per se. I also stated at the time that we would look at a hybrid style to maintain the current climate in Mount Vernon. This was all prior to the possibility of getting vehicles at any of the car dealerships. So we also had a little bit of an issue trying to get the title for the vehicle that was transferred to us from Lisbon. That took almost 6 months.
Way too long.
Yeah. Needless to say, both those vehicles were sold. The grand total for both of them was about $1,550. Lynch is asking $28,450 for this Equinox. It has all-wheel drive. That was kind of important to us. We're going to be doing it out in the winter. Nothing super flashy, but the other comment that I would make is when the supply chain starts to turn around, we would have the opportunity to probably trade this vehicle in for a decent amount of money and look at a hybrid vehicle at some day in the future. But right now, if we were to put an order in for a hybrid vehicle, we would be on a list and we'd probably be a year or two away.
Thanks for looking at hybrids, but I think we need to move on. We can't wait any longer.
So the net out of pocket for the city would be $16,900.
Got a recommendation from staff for $16,900 on this purchase.
So I'd like to move approval of the purchase of the 2020 Chevy Equinox, cash out of pocket, $16,900.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Craig. The motion on the floor to approve the $16,900 towards the 2020 Chevy Equinox as a city travel inspection vehicle. Hearing no further questions, if we're ready to vote on it, this is a voice vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're on item 4, consideration of purchasing a Ford F-150 for Public Works.
So this is another intriguing purchase. You'll notice that we actually went out of town to make this purchase, and it has everything to do with who has vehicles on the lot at the moment and who can still honor government pricing at a higher dollar amount. So McGrath has a fleet service as part of their dealership their price is below the 5% that we would give to the local businesses. My expectation is this is not going to be a norm, but we need a replacement vehicle for the 150 sooner rather than later. And based upon our last purchases, we can't necessarily afford to wait another year.
Any thought of the offset? The earlier motion had an offset because we had a buyer. On this one,
Yeah, so right now,
is it going to be a trade-in or?
there will be, so once we purchase the vehicle, we will put the other Ford F-150 on gov deals. We sell those as is. My guess is somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 is what we probably get for it.
That's what-
Potentially. We were pleasantly surprised with the other two vehicles. 11.5 is about twice what I thought we were going to get for those two. So I wouldn't, we may not, but
It might be 10% of the purchase price.
possibly yes.
And by the way, you say you're going to strip that truck bed out of the F-250. In the next motion
Yes.
is getting a truck bed, right? One doesn't just like snap onto another, they're two different trucks.
No, so this is
One's a Ford.
This, yeah, the one, we would take the truck bed off the 250, we would sell that as well. So it would offset some of these costs, but we would put a utility box, similar to the other pickup trucks that have, one has a lift in the back and things like that. But they carry their tools on our vehicles most of the time.
You can't just take one though from one truck and put it on the other.
No, I wish.
Got a recommendation to go with Graph Fleet, 43,725, with a resale with a trade-in to follow. That's the recommendation from staff. Any further questions for Chris, or I'll entertain a motion?
I move the approval of the staff recommendation to
Thank you.
purchase of the Chevrolet Silverado from Grant.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb.
I know, it's necessary to buy all these vehicles.
There was some reluctance there on that second time.
Well, I hate my cars.
I do.
I can see one.
Motion on the floor with a second to move forward on the purchase of the Ford F-150 for Public Works. This is a voice vote, and if you're ready to vote for that motion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, discussion and consideration of surface body purchase for the Public Works Ford 250.
So this is the current vehicle that's driven by the Public Works Director, but it's a larger vehicle, less conducive for driving around town and more beneficial to being part of the fleet itself. So we would take the current body, we would take the current back end off and then put the service body
I
on.
move to
The
approve.
recommendation is the 12,895, 49 units aluminum.
I move to approve the purchase of the utility box for the F-250.
Second. Second by Craig and Paul. Any further questions, clarifications? Otherwise, ready to move forward on that motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, discussion consideration of economic development status worksheet for the Housing and Family Dentistry. We have Ben Hospital here and Mark Andrews, and asked first, I guess, about speaking. So, Mark, name and address, please.
Hi, Mark Andreessen, 718 7th Avenue, Northwest. So I guess I'll probably learn a bit more here when it comes to it. But I just, running through the packet, I wasn't quite sure, not a lot of information in there. So if we're, they're looking like they're building potentially a new place, or I don't know, renovating what they have now. So since this is kind of the first one that potentially might be using some TIP funding, I was just curious as precedent being set, you know, and if what the benefit would be, you know, for the community as a whole, as, you know, a lot of people aren't able to use that business because it's an out-of-network regarding insurance. So a lot of families that are property taxpayers aren't able to go and utilize that business. So just wondering if there'd be any changes with how they do that, perhaps, and yeah, I guess I just was curious as to more information regarding that, and if, you know, what you guys see as where the funding should be used.
So I can answer most of those questions. First and foremost, this is would be the second business. Technically, Scooters was the first business to locate
Who
within
was the first?
Scooters.
Okay, thank you.
Within the bypass plan area. And if you remember when we adopted that plan, I said that the design standards within this plan are of a nature that is going to drive up construction costs. So the trade would be for the city to look at offering some sort of incentives to potentially offset the additional cost of construction to make sure that this area does not look like everywhere else in Iowa. So more or less kind of what I informed the council. So what I've attempted to do is create a worksheet that takes all what I would consider guesswork out of the equation and basically looks at things that would be of importance to the community. Jobs, site size, average wage, expansion potential, economic development, or economic impact, the business history, and then looking at desirable and compatible. So my goal here is to have a worksheet that each business that wants to locate out there can work through. Now, in this instance, the business, regardless of how insurance works, has been in the community for a long time. And, you know, there isn't any, I don't want to say that there isn't any really guesswork when it comes to this worksheet. And I'm trying to make that a fair process out there. Again, understanding that the cost of construction in that bypass area with the rules that we put in place is going to be healthy. So to answer your question, the reason for the potential for incentives out there is that particular area has an overlay district on it with its own special set of rules. And the individuals that are here can discuss what that additional cost would be, is the reason behind the potential for incentivizing. Now, there will be a development agreement that would be second to this. So once you look at a sheet like this and give the green thumb, or thumbs up, then I would have to still send this over to the bond attorney, and like other TIF agreements, there would be an actual agreement. But they agree to a minimum assessment for the period of typically, 10 years, 8 years, depending on the length of the TIF agreement. And then, like I said, in this worksheet, nobody ever gets 100%. So everybody's paying something, but they would get some of their tax money back that, like I said, offsets some of those construction costs. Theoretically, I feel like I've been pretty open about this entire process, that this is probably what it was going to take in order to make things happen out there. Again, all of these things can be adjusted, and I'm open to conversation there, but I thought this was a fairly fair way and transparent way for businesses to see.
This is this worksheet matrix that you've developed for this would apply to any business coming into Mount Vernon, not just the bypass, correct?
Yeah, so if you look at the bottom, what I consider, so composite incentive score, and then scale for non-park. So the point system's a little bit different for those individual properties that would be outside of the bypass area.
So what we're looking at is that the line that says composite incentive score against the total for this particular project.
Correct.
Okay.
And lot prices, if we owned any, I just left it in there. We don't own any ground out there, so we could probably take that out. But if we owned any, there would be an additional incentive of the lot price would be, in this instance, like, for this particular instance, because they qualified under the 5-year 70%, or 5-year and 70% for TIF, then it would be 70% of the lot value. So if we had $10,000 an acre, they would pay 70% of that versus 100% of that. Yep. Now, I don't foresee us actually purchasing any ground out there, so that might be a moot point for a very long time. But I never know if we're, potentially going to look at a business park in the future as well. So,
Since we have the business owner here, Ben, do you want to speak to any component of this?
My name is Ben Michelle, and I've been a business owner at Uptown Melbourne for it's going on 18 years this year. And we have just grown out of our skin up there. It was an old junk shop and a laundromat for a number of years. And I purchased the property that we're planning on building this building on probably 8 years ago with Matt Margam. Our intentions were to build a dental office and a possibly chiropractic / physical therapy office on that site. And we just came to the conclusion that it was going to be too expensive. That was 7 years ago. It was coming in at about, it was 1.2 million then. And the other two people who were thinking about building on that property were hoping theirs could be put up for 500, and we laughed at it today. I mean, you cannot even build this game for $500,000. So now we come to 2022, and my hopes were that none of this stuff in the last 2 years would happen, but now our construction costs are up another probably close to 30%. And when you're staring at the face of a $2 million project, as a 40-year-old trying to do that, it just seems daunting and untenable. And so part of the motivation for us to do this was to explore the opportunity of TIF funding for it, not because, my practice doesn't make an income and I'm scrounging for ways to build this, but I could finish out my career where I am. Keep it small, not expand at all, not grow. I have this beautiful property. It's a perfect spot for a new place. And I'm looking into the future for me being able to hire an associate someday. I can't do it out of a cracker box. And a way for me to transition out and transition new people in. And that just increases the number of employees we're going to have and the draw that we have across the state. Honestly, our most common new patients are from an hour and a half away. But they come here and they buy stuff. They come here and they stay in town for 2 to 3 hours sometimes. And they bring 6 or 7 family members with them. So the business being uptown as it has been, I don't think very many people know how many people we draw from outside of town into that little dental office. And my expectation is that will continue to even maybe a greater level. But also, whoever we fill the spot that it currently occupied with, also bringing more people in, because I have people knocking at the door wanting to have an opportunity to put their business there. And so, by losing one uptown, we're not losing any business, we're actually gaining a business in the town. So I just think it's a good opportunity for us to get something moving in that area. It seems like things have been stagnant for a number of years, and it's either now or never for me. So.
Any questions?
I appreciate the camper.
Yeah, right, I was thinking, and so, was kind of brought, Ben and I have looked at this property. I've actually bid this, property for many people, trying to find something that can fit the budget, meet these, requirements. Really struggled, finding that, and, Ben and I kind of talking and looking at things, talking, he wants to expand, he wants to grow. And I'm like, Ben, really, that lot is perfectly designed for the medical center. That's what it's for, its size. It can't be a restaurant, it can't be it's just not big enough, but it's perfect for your office and the dreams that you want to, drive. So, I partnered with Ben on the project to kind of try to spearhead this, given there's a lot of expenses with the construction costs. And that's what kind of rolls into the, just the true development, the material, the labor costs to put this up and to meet those design qualifications. You bring up, not to bring names, someone's name up again, but there's some things on that lot that were very uniquely not in favor of the purchaser of it. I've had to run some auctions of a bioswale and some different things that are more expensive because the actual stormwater retention is not, it's all the way to Highway 1. So we either have to contain it on site, or I was able to sweet talk the guys over at the Bridge Bank to partially let us go through the front of their frontage to connect to the Highway 1. All of these things are expenses that Ben going into it didn't even know. But I kind of went in there and put the time and effort to kind of find truly what all are we going to have to expend to make this work. And then we've taken some time to get some plans and elevations that are truly going to benefit the growth of the area. By putting all those costs and things together, it definitely is higher than we want it to be. You guys have all seen the inflation rates that have happened in the last few years, so we're trying to combat those. The family, I have family members that go to Ben, we have friends that come to Ben. I do feel like he has a very good holistic approach on some of the dental work, and it brings a lot of people in. So we just feel like with these costs and these things, having some TIF money just allows us to help absorb some of these costs so that we can truly consider taking this project forward.
Thank you both.
I have a couple comments. One is that we purposely and thoughtfully put together a plan for how we want businesses to design. Funny how these things. So, we purposefully have a plan that drives certain designs and behaviors, if you will, in terms of how we expect people to build out there. And it's a good plan. It was, again, done thoughtfully, and, we've talked about development out in that area. I remember when the bypass was actually on the 5-year plan in 2000, and then suddenly it disappeared for a number of years. So we also have come to understand that TIF has a purpose. And when it's used appropriately, it helps drive economic value and growth. And we do have a commitment to our local businesses. And one, I want to compliment Chris on an excellent visual that really helps me to understand the value of what these numbers are. And when I think of using TIF money and developing business and thinking about what we want to attract as people come through, because I want them to come through and into Mount Vernon, not just pass through. That area needs our investment, and this is one of the ways we can invest in that. Well, I would support this project.
So I need a small clarification. Are you asking the council to look at the worksheet itself without a candidate on it and say, yep, that's a good evaluation, takes the emotion out of it? And then are you also asking for the application to this particular project?
So both. Number one, I'm looking at approach. Do you agree with the approach that I put together here as far as an incentive package and then transparency? And the second is, yes, if you're good with this approach, then our first candidate would be Mount Vernon Family Dentistry, and this is how it would play out. So when a development agreement comes to you, it would be a 5-year, 70% rebate of allowable taxes under TIP. But you will have a separate development agreement that will have to be approved in order to finalize that document. But I think for their purposes, they would like to know whether or not it's feasible.
I have a couple of thoughts, and I want to address one of Mark's questions as well. And Dr. Pospisil said that probably going to keep this practice going for another 20 years, hopefully pass this on. 20 years' time, what's the population of Mount Vernon going to be? It's going to be 10, 20% greater than it is right now. You're going to need a dentist. These will be men and women that will come, some with insurance, some without insurance, obviously. Healthcare is changing nationally and locally just in the last month. It's becoming more and more accessible after sometimes being on the brink of not being as accessible, but now it's going more accessible. If Cornell's going to grow, if the school district's going to grow, these are men and women that are come in with benefits, so they will have them and will need some place to get their teeth cleaned and other dental work taken care of. And so I think that if Ben doesn't grow his practice, somebody else is going to move in here because there's just going to be a demand for it, and they'll put something out there and so on. As far as what is TIF money going to be used for, it sounds like not just moving people passing through, and I think that that's good to note that, but as I say, it's being used for people that are going to be living here right now, especially as this community grows. And so part of our job as a council is to think 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, and do we have the infrastructure and facilities to handle that in all capacities? And so healthcare is going to be one of them. And so I would be in support of this as well as a good use of TIF money for our citizens today and tomorrow.
So the two, because I wanted to think about this first as the evaluation tool. I very much appreciate an evaluation tool of the deal, if you will, that takes the emotion out of it and provides objective measures and provides us some boundaries. So to that extent, I'm very much in favor of this tool as you presented it. I think it represents categories that represent our environment appropriately. It represents our community appropriately. Then secondly, as it pertains to application to this particular deal, I also agree we need to be forward thinking. You know, our community isn't going to stay still. And it's either going to be Ben growing his business, opening up another opportunity for someone else to come in and grow their business in the building that you currently have established, or you do it in both places. I mean, I think this opens up the opportunity to put our best foot forward and to shape that environment at the interchange appropriately and put a project in motion that says, this is how we do it. This is what it is going to look like. So scooters is going to be one thing, Ben's building is going to be another thing, and ultimately your business that goes in that building. So I'm fully on board with
And the
Yeah.
last thing I wanted to say about the TIF money is that, because again, Mark asked a good question, and is that there will be a time that a company or companies look at Mount Vernon as a place to set up shop, to develop tools or widgets or something that the citizens of Mount Vernon may never use. But it does benefit the community by having that business here.
So, you know, and to that end, at a very minimum, let's just say this is $1.5 million building. You've established another $1.5 million that goes for our bonding capacity and goes for our overall value. So when our bonding capacity goes from 12 million, you know, to what was it, almost 16 million in a year, that happens because people like this are building new structures here. And the way that I try to structure this is that I've always been a strong proponent of awarding the businesses that have been in the community and stuck with the community for a long time. So those that have done that and are employing people that are working here are going to naturally receive more points than those that are coming from the outside. Now, just because they just got a building, but if BAE Systems walks through my door and says we want to do it, but it's a whole different ballgame, right? But for individuals that are in the community, this is about as transparent as I can make it, and without favoritism or anything. Here it is, because I hear the comments that are made from Cedar Rapids and Marion when they offer incentives to various projects, and their first comment is always there's no transparency to it. Here's our version. This is, and the basis for all of this is the increase in material costs that it will likely take to construct in that area.
Chris, I know we had multiple conversations, and many, and over a long period of time with, was it Carissa, the agent for scooters?
Yes.
And there was a lot of back and forth, and it seemed like reluctance to actually meet our standards. It seemed like they wanted to cut a corner here, cut a corner there, but you warm down and stayed with the standards, and they come and then eventually complied with it to get it to the point where I think it passed through Board of Adjustment, Planning and Zoning. Have you gotten to the point where you've seen designs yet?
Oh, yeah.
So you're,
And I want to preface this by saying there's multiple ways of looking at things. And one of the best parts about the design guidelines out there is it does give architectural design freedom to the builders and to the designers, and it's intended to do that. Now, there are different ways to look at that. And as a matter of fact, I just got an email today from Mr. Rosen, you know, asking about some of these particular requirements and, you know, whether or not there's any wiggle room in these. His list was far smaller than Scooter's was. But again, they're there for a reason. And I do believe, like I said, when you go through the site plan approval process, there is some flexibility for both the planning and zoning and city council to consider when you're going through that process. But then, you know, you have to consider what it is you're allowing and disallowing. So if your requirement is to have, you know, extra windows and things of this nature to make the buildings look appropriate, and then you approve a building that has 4 solid walls with no window openings, then you might as well have just thrown that plan out the window. So there's flexibility in there, and I think you're still going to have that, but again, it's going to cost more to build in this general vicinity.
one thing I've considered as mayor is looking at professions, and I did not spend much time looking at the dental, but in our community, attorneys. And we have this is just a fact, we're a skewed, older group of attorneys in this town, and I worry about not having backfill with young professionals to serve that segment of the population that needs small town attorneys. And that's just a fact of life. We've got 4 or 5 of them that are going to be close to retirement, and I don't see any young attorneys in town. So when we have an opportunity for a young homegrown professional in this industry, a little bit different industry, I would endorse support of them. I agree with everything that's been said here. I can't speak to the individual scoring and individual details, but definitely the schematic, the method we have here is great. So thanks for that. If that's what it comes out to, that's what it comes out to. But I think this will set the tone for not just this practice, if we can get this going, but also for other niche professions in that area. And see if we can get, for support of this one, we get others that are interested as well. And yes, we will.
Yeah, and I tried to, so most of the scoring is pretty finite, the bottom two, as far as desirable. But you'll notice that 1 or 2 points is never, if we're on the edge, on the cusp of a 1 or 2 point thing, then I would leave that question up to the council as far as whether they felt that was a 1 or 2. In this case, we were right in the middle. 1 or 2 points isn't going to move it one way or the other. And so I think, but then again, going back to the project itself, as much as I could, most of these are fairly finite. It's easy to show your average wage. It's easy to show the number of employees you have on staff. I mean, all of those things are materials that I would just ask the businesses to provide. And we do this. Here's the one thing that I would know, and it's this is going to be the argument. So those that have been here for a long time didn't necessarily get these incentives, and that is true. The goal, same with the subdivisions who both got incentives for setting aside more drainage area. They are opening places for people to, potentially move in, which then thereby opens places for people wanting to try and get in a more affordable house in the other neighborhood. Same here, and I think Ben hit on it. There's a number of people that would take a smaller space in the uptown, potentially aware, that could operate in a smaller square footage. So you're potentially gaining a business and then expanding one that's been here for some time. So, yeah, I like I said, I've tried to make it as fair as possible. Some people are going to disagree with it, but I think it's at least a solid start.
So I would move approval of the incentives as presented by staff for Mount Vernon Family Dentistry.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. It's implied that the model number 1, but also the scoring number 2. So would you say?
And the model can be tweaked, just so you know.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Just the concept, I think, is what we're kind of agreeing to tonight, but.
Motion on the floor to approve the economic development incentives of family dentistry. This is a voice vote. We're ready to vote on it. If there are other questions, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. First step there. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Let us know if you find any young attorneys that want to.
Is that?
Let us know if you find any young attorneys that want to come to work.
I would have to work on that one. That's not how it was long.
Next item, discussion and consideration of site plan for Public Works Bryant Road facilities.
I had intended, obviously the summertime complicates trying to get volunteer boards together, and P&Z only meets once a month, so they were unable to obtain a quorum at their last meeting. That's why this is where it's at. It ended up working out right because we rejected the bids, and we're still going to approve the site plan before the project is bid. But for practical purposes, we're looking at most of our, what I would consider cold storage on the east end of the facility. The setup is designed specifically to utilize the least amount of concrete between the buildings, so you're using common pads in amongst the buildings. Now, where you see the current amount of wood chips in the center is where the administration building would be. We have to maintain some separation from the compost that's on the far end of the property. So our attempt is to kind of push west end for public drop and things that we have in currently, so.
It's got a site plan in front of us for the Brian World facilities. Site plan, any further questions for Chris here? Otherwise, we're going to move forward with the motion.
I'll move approval of the site plan as presented.
Thank you, Deb. Is there a second? Second. Paul. Moved and seconded to move forward with the site plan for Public Works Brian Road Facilities Project. And as a voice vote, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion consideration of setting a public hearing date, creating a public use overlay district for property located at 380 Old Lincoln Highway.
Tom, do we approve all these J8 through J13? How does it work? We go one at a time?
So you're gonna have to go one at a time because they're each a public hearing. Now, they are doing the same thing. So most of our city facilities predate zoning to begin with. Mount Vernon's zoning code is a little unique in that it has a public purpose overlay. So what a lot of zoning districts or a lot of zoning codes in other places will do is say public buildings are in, say, these three districts, usually light industrial down to commercial. That opens the door when you rezone a property to another zoning district like that to have uses, should the public use stop at some point, now you can't take that back. So we rezone to C1 general commercial in order to get a public building to be an allowed use. Now all of a sudden somebody can build another commercial use that's listed within there without little to no fanfare. So the overlay is the safest way that I can present to you to ensure that it's basically going to be a public space moving forward, but it allows us to be compliant with the zoning code as well, should we decide to build facilities at each of these locations. So each and every one of these public hearings is what I would consider cleanup. So all Davis Park, Bryant Park, they were all predate zoning, right? So Laura has just gone through the process to try and make all of these legal under the existing code, and then it will save us a lot of headache moving forward in the future should we decide to do something at any one of these locations.
So cleanup, catch up, starting with the police station property here, and we're basically just setting a public hearing date.
We're recommending that September 19th.
Okay,
It would be the
This meeting
actual
day.
meeting date.
And is planning and zoning considered this next Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. All
Correct.
Okay,
So we'll have to make a motion for each one of these.
Correct.
please. On the first one, police station, September 19th, setting a public hearing date. Is there a motion approved?
I approve the motion to set the public hearing date for September 19th.
Thank you, Deb. Is there a second?
Second?
Greg? Ready to vote on that one? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move approval of setting the public hearing date for September 19 for the city services building.
Thank you, Deb. Is there a second? Craig seconded. Same process. We've got a motion to approve the site for setting a date for the city services building overlay project. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, we're talking about the fire station, current new fire station.
Move approval of setting the public hearing date for September 19 for the Mount Vernon Fire Station.
I'll second.
And Craig, thank you. Again, approval to set that September 19th.
So,
Hearing.
so it's very specific to the old fire station?
606,
No,
second.
it's
No,
the new,
this is the new
it's
fire
the new fire station. Okay, sorry.
This is the other clarification other than.
Yep, yep.
Got a motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 11, same process. This is for the, wait a minute. Consideration of creating a public use overlay district, property located in parcel A, Stonebrook Parkland. Is this behind?
This
that
would be
fire?
the future park, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all of approval of setting the public hearing date for September 19 for Stonebrook Park.
I'll second.
And Craig again. motion on the floor to approve the public hearing date, October 19th. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, we're looking at Bryant Park. Same process, setting hearing date.
I'll move approval to set the public hearing date for September 19 for the Bryant Park parcel.
Thank you, Deb.
I'll second.
And Craig. Motion on the floor for approval. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Date is set. 13, discussion consideration of setting a public hearing date for consideration of amendment to Chapter 24 Historic Preservation Commission to the Code of Ordinances.
This is not a zoning.
Yes.
It's just a set public hearing date, but there's some clarification that needs to, the current code states that members have to reside within the historic preservation district in order to serve that particular district, which becomes problematic in the downtown because the downtown is its own district. For the most part, it works, but I mean, most of the people that are on it from Ash Park or live in Ash Park, but it's just some clarification that's needed. They have plenty of individuals, business owners that own property in the downtown, but don't technically live there, that are interested and willing to sit on the Historic Preservation Commission. So small modifications to that ordinance.
So again, we're setting a public hearing date only?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And that will be September 19th? Okay, so I'll move approval of setting the public hearing date on September 19th for consideration of an amendment to Chapter 24 of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second.
Move the second for September 19th date for historic preservation code change. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are you going to get in touch with Suzette Astley about this?
Yes, we've exchanged emails today.
Okay, I won't then. Last item, discussion consideration of city sewer televising proposals.
So this is a couple things, because you asked me this question before. Why isn't this a resolution? This is a service, this is considered a service, so it would be like hiring an architecture firm or an engineering firm for maintenance. So that's why it's under this particular section. We only had to get quotes, we didn't have to get what I would consider formalized bids. We're looking to televise, clean, review over 60,000 linear feet of sewer. Now, this will identify potential problem sewers, whether or not they can be lined, whether or not they just need to be cleaned, the status of whether or not there's any separation. It will allow us to prioritize our sewer system in probably our most problematic areas of the community. So, the recommendation from B&K is to award this service to HydroClean LLC in the amount of $105,251.92. This is part of our award from Lake County, our American Rescue Plan Company.
So it's a look down on the federal money.
Correct.
What percent of our lines will be scoped then with this? Is that
I hate to put a percentage out there, but I would say almost 90% of our water sewers in the community.
90% of ours? And it's totally 90% of our
Sanitary, yes. So most of, like new stone brook and things like that don't necessarily need to be televised,
Right.
things like that. So those areas are left out of it, but the core portion of the community will be televised and identified.
Great. And thank you, Lynn County, for giving us that.
I can't begin to tell you how impressive.
How wonderful, yeah.
We wouldn't be doing this without that work.
So again, this is just identifying the problem, not fixing it.
Correct. So the remaining portion will go to start fixing or correcting the worst of the worst, and we'll just start working that project list backwards.
A recommendation from staff to move forward with HydroClean as a provider for 105,000 plus on the city sewer televising project.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul. There's a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Voice vote, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? agenda, Sue. L3, corporate memberships to LBC.
Yes.
Ryder, you have something recommend to us?
Well, it's just a discussion item right now, so I don't think there's any action to be taken tonight, but, you know, we have a corporate program at the LDC, and we designed this early on when we first built the building. It was a great thought, but, we're reconsidering, maybe opening it up to some other opportunities. So our current corporate membership program entails a 10% discount if corporations or businesses have 15 memberships, not people, but memberships, or more. So they have to reach that threshold in order to get that discount. We've been approached by 3 or 4 smaller companies in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 months, that want to try to take advantage of that, but they know they can't get to that 15. So they're looking for some type of a discount, maybe not the same, obviously it would be fair, but maybe not the same, but some type of a discount. We're calling it a corporate membership to either buy for their employees or to have their employees have the opportunity to conglomerate to a discount. So they don't necessarily have anything to propose to you. There's just 2. One, the 10% discount is 15 or more. The other option we could look at is maybe having, you can't go to 2 people, like 2 memberships, because that just doesn't make sense, because I just don't feel like that's enough. We might have a family doing that, per se, but maybe like 3 to 5, somewhere in there, memberships, to 14 memberships, getting a 5% discount. Now, it sounds really petty and small, but yet it's still, I feel like it's still kind of an incorporated portion of having an opportunity to get a discount, a corporate membership. So that's the only thing that I've come up with right now, is maybe having a tiered system. If that's something that council would approve and want us to look further into and bring back for a discussion and action item, we can. Or if you feel that we're good with the 15, then that's fine, we'll just sit there.
I would be interested in what other similar centers are doing, if we could bring that forward. I'm cautious about lowering the number too much, because I'm not sure the value gained is there. So would I consider it? Yeah. But I mean,
You need more
to
information.
really understand what what's the gain versus the cost?
Sure. Yeah, I agree, and that's something we would want to look more into. Give you an example, we probably put some criteria with it that would have to be established. And for instance, if there was a company that wanted a corporate discount and they couldn't reach a certain number, then they might reach out and partner with a neighboring company and try and work together to reach that discount. Is that something we want to consider, something we don't want to consider? Because that's 2 different companies coming together. I don't know if that's really the avenue we want to pursue.
I would just say this, Matt, because I think you do a fabulous job of running the LDC and running that business. And, we want to make sure that we can break even at some point here and so on. If the overarching goal is to get more people through the doors, if that's what we're trying to accomplish here, then I'm interested in hearing more about a tiered system, certainly. In enrollment management and higher ed that I was in for so long, we used to say, you don't make money on students that don't enroll. You only make money on students that do come. You don't make any money on people that don't come through the LDC doors. So if you can get more people, more traffic, as an incentive or a loss leader in some way, shape, or form, I'd be interested in hearing about that.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Greg.
So Matt, remind me what our definition of
Membership?
our definition of a corporate shell is
Yeah.
in our.
So, we have criteria. So a corporate is basically a company. It's a company, that's what we're doing.
So I could come to you with my family farm that has a corporation around it.
I mean, the
For
term corporate
example,
is not corporate.
I could do
Yeah,
that.
you could, or business or a corporation or, yeah.
Okay, so we don't define what we really truly mean by a corporate entity. I'm just thinking about some of the initial feedback that we received, where we didn't clearly define what we meant by something, and so people's mind went one way, and we said, no, wait, we weren't really thinking that that was the case, and from a council perspective, and I'm struggling with what that circumstance was, but it was something around membership fees and the categories that we had
Yeah, I
established.
think what you're referring to, Deb, is it had to be an annual membership.
Maybe that was
It
it.
couldn't be a 1 month or a 3 month, because that just didn't make sense to give them a discount for,
That's, I just can't remember, so
Yeah.
I guess my request back would be, as we consider this, let's be descriptive what we
Yeah.
really truly mean.
And we have some criteria involved, and one of them is, it has to be an annual membership. It can't be a 1 month or a 3 month, because then you have people joining, falling off, and that number fluctuates so much that it'd just be hard for us to keep track of. So we have an annual anniversary date that somebody would sign up for. You have to have X number of memberships. They would provide us with a list of their employees that are eligible for that discount, and we would ask them to do that maybe twice a year because employees change. We had an anniversary date for those employees to sign up on, and then we had another opportunity for them to sign up again, maybe halfway through the year because they were joining. So there's two different sign-up, I guess, but back to your question, yeah, we were looking at people that had employees, businesses that had employees that would qualify. And then we looked at 15 was the number that we had set when we first opened the building, memberships, not people. So for example, if the Ryan family had 12 kids or whatever it may be, they wouldn't all necessarily qualify as that 15, they would qualify as one. So they had to reach 15 memberships and they had to be annual, was really the criteria that we really threw out there as the main point.
I think what Matt and I, kind of where we're at, the reason that we had this conversation was, again, recognizing what Mount Vernon is and who we are, and it's a collection of what I would consider small businesses. In order to reach 15, there's like less than probably half a dozen businesses in the community that could actually take advantage of that discount. So, again, recognizing that a smaller number would potentially not be, obviously we don't want to offer them a 10% discount, and 15 is saving us an awful lot of work by all the things that we provide for us. But if we met in the middle and gave them a 5% discount per se, or companies that were willing to sign up for somewhere between 4 and 14 employees, it's a recognition of the uptown businesses and the other smaller businesses that are in town that, and I think that's kind of where we were at. As Matt and I said, nobody is necessarily knocking down our door saying this is unfair, but it's more of a recognition. So.
More of an incentive program, I guess we could call it. More than anything. It just seems like just a nice time of the year where people are starting to approach us. They're doing their work, finding their employees opportunities, and we're just trying to find a way to help them. So, but again, I respect the fact that we've got our annual membership fees are the lowest in the area for what we offer for value. So for what we have available at the facility. So I understand that as well. So I don't want to give away the bank, but at the same token, it's a good way for us to partnership with corporations, businesses, and their employees.
But to your point, Craig, too, at 5% for a family membership, you're talking a little over $30, I think. If that $30 is enough to entice one or two, now you've generated $1,000 of money that you may not have gotten before. So I think that was kind of the basis behind this, was not necessarily giving away the bank, but if we can entice a few more memberships, because this is what this building is about. The more members, the better, and that's how we're going to get to a break-even status.
Yeah, and Mr. Turner's point, there, we have looked at several other organizations, everybody does it different. That's the hardest part, is, there's the big companies that do it a certain way, and there's the smaller companies that do it a certain way, and we haven't found a perfect system, if you will, but we're still researching that. But I guess I wanted to approach council now to see if it's something worth investigating, or if we're happy with where we're at, and just maintain that and try to work on that. There's still several organizations we haven't approached yet from a corporate standpoint. One has probably changed the tune a little bit, but maybe not so much, but it's Cornell. As you know, they have a new facility that they built, but right now it's not being able to be utilized by certain groups. But eventually I think they'll find a way to do that. And then we've got the Lisbon School District that we're going to approach hopefully soon to try and get them involved. So those are two of the bigger ones, obviously, in the area that can probably hit those numbers. But we're finding that we're running out of those opportunities. So.
What I hear is council would like you to continue with that second tier of corporate membership. Look forward to seeing what you have to present.
I have a feeling if you're okay, we'll come back next meeting and propose something.
Okay. On the agenda.
Awesome, thank you.
Last item in the discussion is water tower maintenance. I think Alex wants to move forward to move on.
This is just more of an FYI. Obviously, we have to maintain the water tower, and part of that is removing sediment. So if you can imagine the water tower has that big hole, but there's a standpipe in the center, sediment will accumulate around that standpipe. We've been really lucky, according to Alex, that sediment, because of the water quality that we have coming in the tower, is pretty minimal, but it does have to be done. And the only thing that I would, point out to residents is during this time, and the reason we choose fall, obviously, is people aren't watering their lawns and certain things like that. So we do ask people to try and conserve water. We do have one well that has 2 booster pumps that will maintain pressures, but if we have a water main break or something of that nature, you will definitely see a net effect on your water pressure. So goal being that this will happen as fast as they can, hopefully over a 3 to 4 day period. But if they find items that need to be rectified, it can be down over anywhere from a week or 2, it just depends.
So we full fire departments, Lisbon knows about it, everybody?
Yeah, so we have an agreement with Lisbon as far as the fire departments are concerned, and then the fire departments will typically make sure that their apparatus or pumpers are full of water and ready to go. We let the schools know because they have sprinkler systems that are tied to our system. All of that should still work policy, but like I said, one little instance can have an effect.
We'll go smoothly for Alex. Reports, as far as mayor's report, I didn't bring a 10 Friday morning, a 9/11 celebration with our volunteers. And then at lunch, I'm going to catch a solid waste agency program at the county road site. There. That's about all I have to share. Any council reports, committee reports, city administrator's report?
Nothing other than Sue will have the next meeting. I will be in Columbus, Ohio. No, you know what? The funny thing is, there is one in town that weekend.
Go Bucks.
So, yeah, that's my annual trip. It'll be about as close as it will be for the next 5 years. I think I go from here to Pittsburgh and Austin, LA, and Tampa.
Anything else that needs to come before this council? If not, we are adjourned at 8:15. Thank you very much.